recording now. Um, there were supposed to be 9 people on here. I don't know. Nobody has like said they weren't coming, so we'll see if other people join. But since it is just the 3 of us, hopefully we can have, instead of having more of like a lecture style, which is what I was planning on with 9 people, we can maybe change it to be a little bit more conversational and just feel free to keep yourself unmuted if you want, just so it can be like a conversation. You can just kind of butt in whenever you want, but you don't have to. And I'll just keep talking and pause when I was planning on pausing to ask questions. But since there are fewer of us, I think it will give an opportunity to have it more catered to you two and like what your actual questions are, and like we can maybe even do a deeper dive into things versus just like a surfacey like presentation that I was kind of planning on having. So yeah, and everybody can see my screen. Okay.
Yep.
Excellent. So thank you for attending. This is part of our advocacy workshop series. In the past, last year we did a full day workshop training, which was 8 hours. It was very intense. And we kind of plowed through this entire workbook that we have that goes through all aspects of planning a campaign. And it was developed from the Midwest Academy. It was also taken from this organization that used to exist called the Alliance for Biking and Walking. And it was for grassroots organizing. And because of COVID, among other things, we have decided to not hold that in-person training, but instead I've decided to break it down into more relevant topics that bike and pedestrian advocates have been talking about, that they are interested in hearing, and that I think are relevant to what bike ped groups are actually working on, like now versus, a topic that maybe I'm interested in discussing. These are things that groups have said that would benefit them. So yeah, I don't know if you're familiar, Catherine, with the bike and pedestrian groups, but there are about 22 all over the city and surrounding municipalities, and they kind of started about 5 or so years ago, when my boss, Eric, he attended one of the trainings for the Alliance for Biking and Walking and came back and wanted to start them in the neighborhoods because, Bike Pittsburgh, we are a small group and we can't be in every single neighborhood, and having local voices within the neighborhoods are really important to help usher change and get more biking and walking infrastructure done. Walt is in the one for Bloomfield Livable Streets. And so he has firsthand experience being in one of those. So,
yeah. So do you mind if I just like introduce myself and ask you a question? Or well, I guess we're about to do intros here. Because so here's the thing. I'm relatively new to Pittsburgh. I've been here for about 2 years now though. And when I arrived, I was in Squirrel Hill, and I know that they do have like a bike ped group.
Yep.
And just because of what was going on when I moved here, I wasn't able to really join any of their meetings. But I used to live in San Francisco and was very involved in their advocacy group out there. And actually my husband was like an advisor to the city council basically on bicycle transportation out there. So now here we are in Pittsburgh, and now we've moved to Greenfield. There is not a bike ped committee in Greenfield. So I was sort of like researching all that this weekend, and that's when I stumbled across this series of yours. So I would like to get a bike ped group sort of organized in Greenfield, particularly because we bought a house on Hazelwood Avenue, and it's like, there's way too much traffic. Everybody complains about it. It's super loud and noisy. I totally hate it. I want to do like some kind of traffic calming thing, but I figured the best route to that would be through a bike ped group. So I feel like, you know what I mean, to achieve my goal, it's like I got to start way back at the beginning maybe. So that's, it's good to hear that, Walt, you're a part of one of these bike ped groups, and that's what I'm trying to get out of this whole entire session is like, where do I even start to get people interested in like bike ped in this neighborhood? Especially because exactly where we are, it's like the part that connects up to Beechwood, which already is a bike lane. And people come through here all the time to go all the way down to the waterfront, you know, and take like the Gap Trail. So I feel like it's a good place to like do traffic calming for bikes and pedestrians. But like I said, I don't even know where to start. So
Yeah. Yeah, there's actually a lot of, not a lot, but there's a handful of people who um live in Greenfield that I've been in contact with, and they're just looking for a leader because nobody, a lot of the people are either like parents and they feel like they don't have that extra time to like organize a group or call meetings. And so maybe I can send you an email, or we could chat like offline, like after this meeting at some other time, like about how to get one started.
that would
um,
be great.
but there definitely is interest in that area, and there are people who are already like in that conversation. But the Greenfield Community Council, I believe their name is, they do have like a traffic and safety like subcommittee, which is the closest thing to a bike ped group there. They do meet monthly, but as far as I know from the people who I've talked to about biking and walking in the area, they said that they don't focus solely on biking and walking. And so they want to have a bike ped group in addition to like that traffic like subcommittee.
Cool. Yeah, let's definitely sync up offline after this. I'd really like to get in touch with the other people who are in my neighborhood that are interested in this.
Yeah. Yeah. If you
Cool.
just send me an email, it's Anna, ANNA, at bikepgh.org. I can just respond to your email then.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
So I thought we could just get started. I guess you kind of already went, but yeah, just giving like your name, your neighborhood, and you already said what motivated you to attend. And I guess you gave like a fun fact. My fun fact was going to be like a book that you're reading or listening to, or a podcast, or a musician or something. Um, so I don't know if you wanted to add something extra.
Sure, I'll add something. So I read a lot, and my favorite genre is like literary travel narratives. So
Oh,
not like reading a Lonely Planet, but like reading somebody's sort of like adventure story about where they traveled. And I just started one recently by a guy who writes for National Geographic named Douglas Preston, and it's a story about him and his partner and their like 9-year-old daughter, and they go by horseback through what do you call it, like Monument Valley and that part of the country about 15 years ago. So imagine taking like a 9-year-old on horseback through like some of the driest deserts in North America. So it's pretty
that's
interesting.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
Walt, do you want to go next? You're muted.
Gosh darn it. Okay, yeah, I'm in the Bloomfield neighborhood. I've done like a whole bunch of like graphic work for the West Pittsburgh Bike Pedestrian Committee as well, because West Pittsburgh is pretty far behind other parts of the city, especially with the arterial entries to that side of town. Pretty rough. So I feel like it's constantly a push to get something happening over there. I don't know. That's why I keep showing up to things.
Yeah.
Because the whole city and region can continually be better. There are lots of cool opportunities, and we just need people to advocate for them. So, and somehow make it happen. Be one of the days.
Are you reading anything interesting right now or listening to something?
Good question. I don't know. I've never enjoyed thrash metal music until like a week ago.
Is there a band that got you hooked?
Uh, well, my younger brother's favorite was Megadeth, and I started listening to Megadeth last week.
Huh.
And just always like I would never listen to it. But then for whatever reason, like it just clicked last week. I'm like, oh, this fits the mood. I'm like, wow, this is like really talented musicians going on here. Okay. So that was weird, but let's go with that.
The magic of music.
Yeah.
Something for every mood.
Yeah.
um, cool. Well, my name is Anna. I am the community organizer for Bike Pittsburgh. I run all these bike ped groups and work on like grassroots campaigns and on the ground advocacy events or things like that. I live in Friendship right now. I used to live in Highland Park. I've grown up all over the East Coast, so I'm not a native to Pittsburgh, but I've lived here for quite a while. Obviously, I'm attending today because I'm putting this on. um, I'm in a book club, but right now I finished our last book, and the name is slipping me. But I listen to so many podcasts that it's like insane, and I think my newest favorite podcast that I've started listening to, like just last week, is called Asian Enough, and it's talking a lot. It interviews a lot of like Asian American people and like their experience in the United States. And I just think it's really entertaining. Besides that, I like to listen to a lot. I've recently been listening to a lot of food podcasts because of COVID, like being at home, really interested in trying new recipes and like stuff like that. So anyways, what we'll spend the rest of our time on is going over like a short recap of like campaigns, kind of what we went over in the last session. These sessions you don't have to attend, obviously, like in order. It doesn't matter what you attend, what you don't attend. But then I wanted to talk about who is your audience, like who are you making your campaign for? And then we'll dive into tactics. And then I thought we would finish out the hour with a short activity. So yeah, and obviously, like I said before, like please stop me, since there's just the three of us. We can really like get into questions if you have any. I'll just keep talking and like stop every once in a while and ask if you do have a question, but please stop me if you have one and I haven't asked you. So anyways, moving on. So short recap. So campaigns, they come in all shapes and sizes. They all have a wide variety of timelines, and they can cover almost any topic. This is a picture. Obviously, it's not biking and walking, like Stop the Dakota Access Pipeline. There's Standing Rock. Like, there's so many different things that you can organize around. It just is always over something that people feel very passionately about, and that usually nothing is being done. Like no action is being taken fast enough or in an urgent way for these people who are organizing around it to feel like it's sufficient. It can even be something that isn't as, like national awareness. It could be something just as small as like, I just want a crosswalk. Which is what a lot of people in these bike and pedestrian groups work on, are things that, somebody, all the way in Japan's not going to care about if there's a crosswalk here, but it affects people's everyday lives. And so you can even make a campaign around something smaller and like more personal to a specific area. All campaigns, though, focus on a specific issue, whatever that is. They all need a plan in order to win, and they should have measurable outcomes. So you can see, like, there is no sidewalk now, and now there is a sidewalk. There is no crosswalk now there is a crosswalk. So there's an actual outcome. They should have a specific target person or audience that needs to be convinced to make the change. So we'll get into this a little bit further down the road, but in order for it to be a campaign or warrant a campaign, it should have somebody. I'll just throw out an example, like the mayor, who needs to be convinced to do something or change something in order for it to warrant a size of a campaign. So there's 6 steps of campaign planning in a very broad and basic level. So first, you want to define your issue. So like whatever that is that you are organizing around. Then you want to set your campaign goals, assess your resources. So kind of like a SWOT analysis, like what are your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for your group. You want to strategize about who your primary and secondary targets are. So who are you primarily trying to convince about this, and who are secondary people? So in order to get to the mayor, do you have to talk to city council? And before city council, do you have to talk to neighbors and other people in the public's realm. After you strategize about that, you need to develop your communication plan. So you need to be able to talk about what you are working on. So it's not enough to just be like, well, doesn't everybody understand this issue? I can just like convince people. You have to have a well thought out way to talk to people about an issue, and not just like something that is not cohesively put together. And then once you do all of that, that is when you can develop your tactics and a timeline. So usually most people want to start with the tactics because it's the most fun, in a sense. Like, it's when you get to go out and actually do things in the public realm. You get to talk to people, you get to show why you're passionate about it, like why you're even raising awareness about something. And then you can put like a timeline to all of these things. But unless you have done all of the 5 steps beforehand, you won't be able to pick the right or appropriate tactics that fit with the rest of your campaign. So it's really important to do all of those other steps before you develop tactics. And today, we're not going to go through all of those other steps. What we're going to talk about are tactics and the type of and different tactics that are appropriate for different actions. So, for example, like I was saying before, like you want to put in a sidewalk, you might not need to have, a banner thrown down the side of the city council building to talk about a crosswalk, or you might not need to rally like 6 million people to like sign a petition, but you might need to ask neighbors on that street to like 311 something, or talk to their city council person. And so just really knowing who your audience is and defining your issue and doing all those previous steps will really help to strategize and come up with appropriate tactics for your campaign. So go ahead.
I have a question sort of about what Bike Pittsburgh offers as support for that. So I think sometimes there is opposition to, putting in bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, and I don't know if my neighborhood is going to be hostile to it or not, but I mean, we all see it, where like people hate bike lanes or they hate soft hit posts or whatever because they think slow traffic is bad for your community. So does Bike Pittsburgh offer support in developing communication strategy to deal with that kind of opposition that you might encounter?
I mean, like we're here to help on like pretty much any level.
Okay.
I think that like, it's a delicate balance between like us stepping in and then having people who actually live there be the voice, because having people who are local and live in a community holds much more weight, at least in how Pittsburgh functions and like the way neighborhoods function. And I think Walt could probably jump in on this one too. And it's like the dynamics of a neighborhood really rely on who lives there. We can help by, like if you want to write guest blog posts and put them on our site, if you need help like knowing who to talk to at the city, we can make those types of connections. We can we can help, like if you want some sort of like a template or something made for like Instagram or Twitter, like we can help do like basic graphic designing. We can, there's different ways that we can help, but like for every campaign or every, different issue that you're dealing with, different things come up. But so we're always here to help, but I can't say like off the bat, like, yes, every campaign's like always different, but generally speaking, yes, we can help. It just depends on what it is.
Okay.
And like who might be best to like step in and talk or like do something. But we are definitely here to like help you strategize and come up with those levels of things. And if it does happen to be us, then we can help step in. And if it happens to be you or like somebody else in the neighborhood, then like that, like whatever's appropriate, we'll help you figure it out.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so campaign, advocating for your cause. So a good campaign has a thoughtful plan. And once you've made that plan, you can start brainstorming tactics, kind of like I just said. So advocacy requires using different tactics to tap into various sources of power. And each action or tactic or approach should be tailored specifically for each goal and each targeted person. So I can't emphasize that enough, that like you have to know who you are trying to reach in order to come up with the tactic that will work best. So if you're trying to, when think back to like when you were little or something and you were trying to, ask your parents if you could like go to the amusement park, like, are you going to ask your mom first or your dad first? Are you going to get all of your siblings involved and have them kind of help you reach that person? So it's kind of like going through those things and making sure that like you're not going to ask this person this way and this person another way, like making sure that everything fits like what that person understands. So before you choose your tactic, ask yourself, who is the person in power to make the change that I want to see? And this does take planning. And if you're confused, like this is a good time to consult with Bike Pittsburgh or maybe your community group or your neighbors, because it's often not clear. And sometimes as you develop your campaign or you go along, you find out that like, it's actually not this person, it's somebody else. And so you have to change your tactics or maybe your approach. And it's good to find out like what motivates this group of people or the person that you're trying to target, and what would help this person to sway their decision in favor of my issue. So would it help if you had 5,000 signatures on a petition? Do you only need 20 signatures? If you were going that way, does it only take, having the voice of children and the marginalized or something, showing up to like persuade somebody to change their vote or to change their view on an issue? Like you could also be having a campaign just to change the views of your neighbors who are anti-bikes. So what would that be? If your campaign is to just change opinions, maybe the only thing you need to do is knocking door to door and just having one-on-one conversations. And I think it's also important to think too that like some people you're just never going to change, or it would be harder to sway their opinion, which is why usually politically speaking, living in someone's district and being a voter holds a lot of weight when it comes to tactics. Any questions? Okay, so on to choosing your tactics. Walt, did you have a question?
I think maybe a general comment on that.
Yep.
But I know specifically to the West Pittsburgh Bike Pedestrian Committee, it's like a lot of the times I'll have ideas, and I have the ability to like sketch them out, but I think the loudest voice is like petitioning specifically to like city council, since I'm not in that district specifically, but I would like to see work happen. Like there are people in that bike pedestrian committee who actually live in that district whose actual voices, and they are the people of contact there. And so that's why it's great to have those groups.
Right. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So I thought I'm trying to make this presentation a little bit more interactive and less boring. So I wanted to first start off with watching this short video from Transportation Alternatives. So I just wanted to share that video, short and sweet. It's just a campaign that they put on just at the beginning of COVID to remind people that like, hey, like it's always been there. Do you remember it? Like now's a good time to get out and start riding your bike again. And that was it. That was like all that they were trying to accomplish. But that was a tactic, just having something short and sweet and easy to view and share. So tactics, what are they? So tactics in the grand scheme of things in your campaign planning are your to-do list. There are many kinds of tactics, and positive support can be as effective as simple pressure. So, for example, the city puts in a bike lane, and sending them like 100 thank you notes for putting that in, can help be supportive for a future project or something else, and that is a tactic. So that's kind of what the positive support means. It doesn't always have to be like pressure to make something change. It can just be a thank you. So each of your tactics should meet the following criteria. They effectively achieve your campaign goals. They are appropriate to your organization's culture and will strengthen and not divide it. Addresses a primary or secondary target or an identified public audience. It's fun, or at least not so daunting that it'll alienate your base of supporters. It's achievable, and it's realistic, meaning that you have time, money, and the people power necessary to execute it. Do you have any questions about any of those criteria? Being appropriate for your organization's culture, that'll strengthen, not divide it, I think can get a little confusing. So making sure that everybody in your group, like your bike and pedestrian group, is on board, or at least there's enough people on board to make sure that your tactic would work. So like if you wanted to do door knocking, is everybody who is willing to participate in this able and comfortable knocking door to door? Or do they have the skills? Do you need to have a training to train people on how to do that? So like going through all of these things is just like making sure that, maybe you want to do something that's like, for example, like dropping a banner that says something like controversial or something out of like the side of a very public space. That might be a really good way to effectively achieve your goal. Like you can get your message out there very quickly. It's appropriate because you're an advocacy group, you are a change maker. It addresses your primary target, which might be somebody in the public, and you really want them to see this and bring attention, and it draws the media. It's fun because, you got to go do something super public. It's achievable. It only takes an hour or so to do, and you can get all of your stuff from free because, your neighbor has a bed sheet that you can use, and it costs $5 to get spray paint. But you're the only person in your group that's willing to do it, and nobody else supports you. So do you think that's a good tactic or a bad tactic?
Clearly not a good one for the culture of your group.
Right. So like thinking through things like that, where it's like, it might seem good on all sides, but at the end of the day, it's not good because nobody else wants to do it and get on board. So thinking through tactics like that is what you need to do for like everything that you're planning on doing.
So I have another kind of just like general question.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know if you can even answer it, or maybe it's something for when I connect to the other Greenfield people to talk to them about. But like this idea of door knocking and petitioning, I've looked at other things, and other campaigns that would involve door knocking and trying to like collect signatures for petitions. And are people even doing that right now with COVID, or advocacy groups like advocating that you do virtual door knocking or flyering or something?
So like, yeah, to answer this question,
If
Walt, feel free to jump in, whatever. Pennsylvania,
if you want to
were you going to say something? Walt?
copy. Yeah, there was a thing where third-party candidates were denied ballot access, and they said, no, you still have to collect signatures even though there's a pandemic. And so I have a couple of friends who are in the Green Party locally, and we were out at the farmers market. I think I was out for like 2 weekends collecting signatures for them to get ballot access because the state said, nope, you can't have relief. So there are signatures happening.
Yeah.
That's why it's funny. I actually just got a text about it that apparently they met their threshold
Nice.
to get my friend on the ballot. So that's cool.
Was it, how was it when you were collecting signatures at the farmers market? Were people like, no, I don't want to touch your pen? Or was it people pretty much okay with it and willing to sign?
It depends. I'd say of the people who are willing to like give any time, like anybody who's willing to sign, we had hand sanitizer for
Yeah.
everybody. Everybody got a squirt after they signed. Um, but also, I feel like there are just like a lot of like general like, no, this is not the year for third party candidates and that kind of vibe.
Mm. So Anna, I don't know if you like more broadly, like in my particular situation, I think it would not be like a farmer's market kind of thing. It would probably be more literal door knocking. And I don't know if that would like turn people off, like people who might otherwise want to support the cause. You like are literally knocking on their door right now, that they might like all of a sudden get turned off. So I don't know if it's just like not a good time to be starting that kind of campaign.
Yeah, I don't think it's a good time to be starting that kind of stuff. Legally speaking, it's like, if you're doing everything that you're supposed to be doing, no one can stop you, especially
Yeah.
kind of like to Walt's point where it's like if you're trying to get someone on the ballot or something, and like the the rules in PA are that like you have to have X number of signatures for a thing. Um, they're like on the flip side, like if you're just trying to get support for something and you don't need to get on the ballot, you don't need to have like actual signatures, and electronic signatures can count. Like there are plenty at this point, there are plenty of online services that, you can get those electronic signatures, and like, you know, email addresses I've heard like now count as
Mm.
like unique impressions versus a signature, as well as like getting people's addresses or zip codes are enough. But it just all depends on
Yeah.
like what you're trying to prove, and like what validity you're looking for.
Okay.
Yeah, and if there's public opinion things, a lot of times I feel like there's a lot of non door to door infrastructure out there that works as well. So like there are a whole bunch of different. We have a couple groups in Bloomfield on Facebook. Then there's always Nextdoor. And there's other like online infrastructure in place to actually relate to your neighbors, even if you can't like physically see them or knock on the door.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, the initial thing that I was thinking about like would literally require something like 50% of owners on a certain stretch of block to like sign it to get a survey done. But this is still early, and I think this is why I've sort of like changed my idea, and rather than just like trying to start it myself, decided to like connect to some group. So again, I think maybe in my case, once I connect to the other people who you mentioned are interested in Greenfield, we'll be able to come up with something. And
Yeah.
probably for next year then, when hopefully COVID's more under
I'm
control.
guessing you're talking about the traffic calming
Yeah.
application. And I think with that, like you can email the city and see if they're willing to like waive that during COVID.
Oh,
You know?
interesting. Yeah.
And just, see how lenient they are. I do believe though, like for that, it is one of those like tricky situations where it's like PA requires X number of property owners to like sign on to something, but maybe to get like the initial just survey and project started, it doesn't need that many.
Yeah.
Um,
I'll look into options.
yeah. I mean, there's also like, like a different way to do it would be like just putting a slip of paper in everybody's door and asking them to sign it and drop it off at your house later. If it's
Mhm.
something, and that way you touch every house, but you're not talking to them or like literally like touching them. You're just giving like sending something to them. 'Cause
Right.
I've been getting at my house a lot of like solicitations, like, hey, we're in the area doing construction. Call us back if you need a new window, stuff like that. So I think leaving mail is a perfectly acceptable way to do things now. And in
Okay.
fact, that's something that the city's starting to do is mailers, because that door to door isn't really an option right now.
Okay. Yeah, I
Uh,
appreciate all the information from you both on this. Really
yeah.
helpful.
Mhm. Yeah, so questions to ask when you're coming up with your tactics. So, what needs to be done? So, we could take this traffic calming thing, as an example. You have to get those signatures. Like, who will contact whom? Like, are you going to be the one that goes out and does the actual collection of signatures, or is that going to be somebody else? What will be your group's first coordinated effort? So this would be a great project for like your first bike ped group meeting to work on. How will you communicate your message? Are you going to, you know, like post on your community groups thing that like you're looking into traffic calming, so be aware that you might be getting a piece of paper to sign? You know, are you going to announce it somewhere publicly so that people aren't thrown off when they get something? And how will you develop community or political support? So if you want to get this traffic calming, are you going to approach like the community group and ask them, you know, have you ever tried to do this in the past? You know, I want to do this now. Do you support this even happening? You know, and different questions like, will it be an informal public meeting to get this? Do you want a series of one-on-one meetings? Maybe you want to talk to your council person and get them on board so that they are behind it and could maybe, you know, send out something in their newsletters. Do you want to write a letter to the editor just talking about like, I support the bike plan and I realize that it just came out, and something that I want to try to do is get traffic calming in my neighborhood, you know, and just talking about how you really value neighborhoods that promote slower traffic and ways to walk to, you know, essential businesses, especially now. And an effort to persuade your town or government to pursue a policy change. So we are lucky in Pittsburgh, we have a complete street policy, but do you wish they would step their game up and like adopt a Vision Zero policy? And who do you need to talk to get that done? Or who do you need to develop a relationship with? So I'm going to try to go faster a little bit through this because I think I'm talking a little too much, but how to pick your tactics and goal setting. So your campaign goals need to be broken into short, medium, and long term. Short-term goals are usually can happen within like a month or 2 months. Like they're very quick. Medium-term goals would be like 3 months to 6 months, and long-term goals would be up to like a year or a year and a half. And your campaign maybe is going to can be something that's very long-term, like 5 years, but you want to break the whole campaign up into smaller chunks to achieve in like smaller portions of time. So say you wanted to get a bike lane on Hazelwood Avenue, and, you know, that might be like a several-year project because you need to get funding for it. You need to figure out who the funding source is going to be. Then there's like construction periods. You have to wait for COVID to end and for more funding to, you know, open up. And so you're realistically thinking about, you know, maybe this is like a 3-year thing. So who in the short term, within the next couple of months, can I start talking to figure out how to get this done? What do I need to do in the next 6 months to work on this? And then what should I be working on in a year and a half from now? So like, you know, when does the funding cycle start for the city so I can request it? How long does it take to get a traffic study done? So like working backwards from like different things will help you set your goals. And so your tactics then will be picked for each of those goals, and they should be SMART. So SMART is an acronym that stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. So kind of what I had said before for all of the previous goals, like finding out who your target people are, is making sure that for each of these goals, the short, medium, and long term, you have the person who you need to pick as your target so that you can have all of your tactics towards those target. It can even be a group can be a target. Like you need to convince people at the school to, you know, sign on to having speed limits reduced to 20 miles per hour or something. You know, like whatever it is, you need to be able to identify who this person is so that you can tailor your tactics for those people. So how to pick your tactics continued, looking at, this is called power mapping. So you don't need to do this now, but what I wanted everybody to bring like a piece of paper for is so that you can draw these 3 circles and put down your primary targets, your secondary targets, and the connectors for all of those targets. So when you are thinking about strategizing for your goals and for your campaign and picking your tactics, you want to be able to pick like who ultimately is going to be this person that decides. Like, is it going to be the director of the mobility and infrastructure? Is it the mayor? Is it everybody who lives in my neighborhood who can vote yay or nay on this? Is it, you know, you find that, and maybe what happens through this process is that you find that all of those people are positive on it, but the one person that is against it, who is stopping the whole thing, is like a developer. And so like you find out that like you need to talk to like the developer who owns like the one crucial part of land that you need in order to like make a connection happen. So figuring out who all of these people are that can influence your campaign, it's really crucial to have it all mapped out. And it does take sometimes it takes a lot of work doing background work to identify these people, but once you have them figured out, it makes everything a lot easier, like to just like roll out different things and to pick different tactics. So getting into tactics specifically, they can kind of be categorized into all of these things. So there's lobbying, you know, like on a very large scale, like you can have lobby days where you go to like DC or you meet locally with your senators and congressmen and you try to convince them about adopting a policy. Like the parking protecting bike lane policy is a recent one that we were working on. There are fun tactics. That's a picture of me downtown in the Penn Avenue bike lane. And about a year or so ago, we celebrated, ever since they started counting people, that the 1 millionth trip had been taken. And so that was part of like a larger campaign called Extend Penn, where we're trying to extend those Penn Avenue bike lanes eastward and to make a connection. And so this was one tactic that we did, was to like show that people, because a big argument is that nobody uses the bike lanes. Like we never see anybody in them. And so showing that like, hey, did you know in the past 3 years, like over 1 million trips have been taken. So we were just kind of celebrating that, and we had socks to give away. So that was one of our tactics. There's direct action tactics, which usually is like when you think of like tree huggers, you know, like you chain yourself to a tree and you like won't move because you're putting your life on the line. Those are kind of controversial, and they really take people like willing to, you know, really put themselves out there. There's petition and letter writing, which is a really good and kind of easy tactic because you can just do it on your own by yourself. There are rallies and marches, which we're all very familiar with. You know, the internet, which can, you know, delve into like social media. Social media is like a completely new area of advocacy, you know, ever since that came about, is something that people are actually paying attention to now. You know, we've already kind of discussed voting, like ballot boxes, like trying to get something to be voted on. Like, I believe like last year, a good example might be the park tax, like trying to get a tax increase for like parks. Public meetings, like you could try to call your own public meeting about something, or attending another public meeting about a project and showing up with signs, or showing up and doing like one of these other direct actions like at a public meeting. So a public meeting doesn't have to just be to learn, to educate or do something like that. It can also be a time for like putting or executing one of these other types of tactics. And then non-participation is a way of doing something. So not paying your taxes would be a way of like protesting the tax, or just like not participating in something is also a tactic. So here's just a list that I kind of came up with of common tactics. There's a whole bunch here. I don't know if you want to screenshot it or something like that, but you know, obviously there's door-to-door canvassing, street canvassing, phone banking, tabling, house parties, lobby day, district meetings, online organizing, rallies and public demonstrations, phone petitions, public hearings, town hall meetings, flash mobs, demonstrations, educational events, texting, service projects, taking a leadership role in your community, like joining a board of your community group so that like your opinions can have more weight, getting a petition together, shareholder activism, tactical urbanism, like putting plungers out on the street to show a parking protected bike lane. In San Francisco, they did a literal protected bike lane where people put on orange shirts and they went outside and they stood to literally protect people on their commute home. Doing a 311 blitz. So like getting everybody in your group to like 311 a certain thing so that it raises its profile in the 311 system, hosting a vigil, doing a walking audit, or doing a bike ped car count. These are just to name a few. There's obviously a whole host of other ones, especially when it gets into the more creative side of things. You can really branch out and get creative. I think Bloomfield Livable Streets, what Walt's a part of, has done like some really great things around it. They do like porch parties where people just come out and hang out on their porch. They've done like in the winter taken pictures of like where cars actually drive to show where the snow still remains. So I forget what that's called, but it's what's it called? Neck. What?
Let me check that.
But like basically like you take a picture of unused space, and so you can like maybe put a planter out or like beautify an area that's being underutilized. They also do fun things for like parking day, which is like a specific day in September where you convert a parking space into like another use, so it doesn't have to be used just for parking.
Well, does your org have all that stuff up on your website? Like
Ooh.
your livable street stuff, like the porch party stuff and whatever the winter snow stuff thing is?
Yeah, it's all up on their website.
Okay, cool.
They have a really great website too, and they have a newsletter. Facebook, Twitter, website, newsletter. Join it all.
So like basically look to them as like the gold standard example.
I think the best part about all of the bike ped groups is that every group kind of has their own flavor, which is like, I don't know if you've noticed, like since you've moved to Pittsburgh, but like every neighborhood kind of has their own characteristics,
Oh
like,
yeah.
they're very distinct. And so I think the bike ped groups also take that on. So like each group kind of does things their own way. And I think that's what makes it so exciting. Did you want to say something, Walt? Okay. So moving on, I had a couple of videos that I just wanted to show because since we're not able to like do this maybe how I would have, which is like going out and showing examples of different things, I just have some videos that are examples of like how different organizations or different ways that people have done tactics. So this first one is changing hearts and minds. So this is kind of like that where your bike is, like this is just to show people like what can.
So last year 213 people died on our roads. What do you think would be a more acceptable number?
Acceptable 70 maybe, probably 70.
Can you send 70? Actually, this is what 70 people looks like. So now what do you think would be a more acceptable number?
0.
Like I think that's a really good campaign, commercial or whatever you want to call it, like showing that like, for everybody that thinks that, it's okay for there to be like, just a few deaths on the road, that like really the only acceptable number is 0, because everybody's life matters. So I thought that was a really good campaign. This next one, we also participated in this, but we didn't have a great video, unfortunately, of it. Was called the Red Cup Project, where people put out red cups. I don't think we're going to watch the whole video because it's like a few minutes, but I'll show the very beginning of it.
They call it the Red Cup Project, a day of remembrance and action for cyclists across the country and here in Boston. The death of a cyclist killed in Washington, D.C. last weekend was the catalyst behind a movement calling for more and safer bike lanes.
And it's those red cups that are making a dramatic point. We connected with Galen Mook, the head of the Mass Bicycle Coalition, who had his own minor close encounter just getting down Harvard Ave in Allston. He traveled down the bike lane with cars swerving in and out and proceeded to place plastic cups filled with water on the lane's faded white line, part of the Red Cup Project, designed to shine a light on the need for safer bike lanes.
Well, I'll come back in a little bit and see how many of these are actually run over.
He didn't wait long.
And you can see that up and down Harvard Avenue, that these bike lanes are definitely just not clear. So
Can we walk over and you can, oh,
there's one.
That wasn't the only time a car crossed the line. The scene was repeated throughout the area, like here in Porter Square in Cambridge, on Mass Ave in Boston, and on Beacon Street in Newton.
Paint is not enough. We need to ask for more from our cities if we're going to actually have safe infrastructure that's going to keep people safe on the roads.
Many cyclists want protected bike lanes, like these on Western Ave in Cambridge, separated from traffic to the right of the parked cars.
It's going to take redesigning the infrastructure, which will be a monetary concern. You know, if the stated goal is to reduce congestion and reduce greenhouse gases, then we really need to step it up with the funding and the political will.
Now, cyclists in a number of other cities.
So I think that pretty well shows like when you've got your communication down and your pitch, as well as like the tactic that is like joining across the nation in this movement to use tactical urbanism to demonstrate like the need for more protection when you're biking. Like pain is not enough. You know, like there's a lot of key phrases in there that use like a lot of different tactics, but combine the entire like campaign plan, kind of like wrapped up very nicely into this thing that the media was able to cover, and then like a lot of people were able to see it. So the tactic might have been tactical urbanism, you know, using cups as protection for a bike lane, but it also warranted, you know, like a larger scale effect. And it only took one person to go out and do that. And we did the same thing here in Pittsburgh, and it pretty much had the same effect. I have one more video. This was just here in Pittsburgh. I'll try it. I'll see how long it is.
Okay, go. Yeah, extend the bike.
Hi, I'm Billy Epping. I live in Lawrenceville. I ride through the strip every day to get to work. I use this bike lane every single day. Inbound is no big deal, but outbound, there's just no good way to get up there. I buy groceries in the strip a lot. I come through here all the time, and believe me, I've tried every route going outbound, and there's no good ones. There's the alley over there. It's smelly and a lot of blind intersections. There's Smallman, which has like weirdly a lot of traffic, a lot of stop signs where people try to sneak around you. And then there's Railroad, but that doesn't really go all the way. So there's just no good way to get upstream here. So I think they really need to extend the bike lane. There's plenty of room on Penn Avenue.
So this one was part of like us trying to collect stories about using Penn Avenue so that we could collect these stories and like raise awareness and put more voices than just, you know, the fast cyclist or something like that using it. So that was a tactic that we used. This next slide, I just thought it was a good example of like door-to-door canvassing. It came from reamp.org. In 2012, Michigan Clearwater Fund used door-to-door canvassing as a tactic on their Save the Cherries campaign by highlighting how increased extreme weather events related to global warming impact and fuel unpredictable thaws and frost that destroy cherry blossoms. The National Cherry Festival in Traverse City is held annually in July, and Clean Water Fund takes a week-long trip to canvass the area. Canvassing was part of their micro-messaging strategy to reach a traditionally conservative constituency. To be successful, they tailored their talking points to highlight how cherries drive the local economy and define the community. Collecting over 1,700 signatures from these non-traditional allies was critical to influencing the NSP rule on carbon emissions to fight global warming. So I just wanted to add something else in there that wasn't a video that really talked about like how to use a different tactic, like door-to-door canvassing, to help influence something. So they got out of it, like the time that they put into it, they got out of it 1,700 signatures, which, you know, like for every situation it might be different, but it sounds like a lot of signatures, enough to probably convince or sway or make someone take notice that this is happening. And eventually it helped them to really talk about the carbon emissions. So that was a really good tactic for them to use. I do realize that right now we're at the hour, and the last thing I wanted us to do was to do this activity. So because I don't want to keep you past 7, if you want to do this on your own, I would encourage you to just think through, like, you know, whether it's your traffic calming thing or something else that you want to work on, just kind of just making this chart where you have your short, medium, and long-term goals kind of like on one side, and then like writing out what they are, and then writing out what tactics would fit with those goals. Always keeping in mind like who your person is that you're targeting with each of these things. But hopefully you can spend some time thinking about this. You obviously don't need to do it on the bike racks on Walnut. That was just something I thought we could go over. But yeah, do you have any questions before we wrap up for today?
I think I have all my questions answered, except, you know, the follow-up stuff, which I'll email you about. But that's it.
Great. Yeah, and kind of just going back, like, you know, there's obviously way more tactics than this to use. And I think this is where advocates usually shine the most, is where they get to become creative and really show like how they are able to, you know, like organize the masses of like underground voices that usually don't get to be heard, how they can rally the troops, you know, to show up to a public meeting to really raise awareness about issues that they have, and using their time to like do all of these things that maybe other people either don't care about or are indifferent to, or just don't feel one way or another. Because I will say, like, the final comment I'll make on tactics is like, you're not trying to sway the opinions of people who are already on your side. You're trying to sway the opinions of people who don't agree with you. And so in doing that, you know, really catering things to change hearts and minds is like what this is all about. And, you know, having the supporters come along like on your journey to changing the people who don't believe in what it is that you're working on. So yeah, cool. It was really nice to meet you, Catherine, and welcome to Pittsburgh.
Thank you.
And I look forward to getting that email from you. And if you ever have questions on any of this, obviously Walt knows, and now you know too. You know, I'm always here to help. This is my job, so I like doing it.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, I really appreciate this session, and Walt, you too. I mean, I took a look at the link that you sent to your org, and it looks awesome. So I'm really looking forward to diving in a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Minute joiner.
I guess Bruce Chan in our group does a ton of the heavy lifting for Bloomfield. So.
Yeah. Hi, Sue. We are just wrapping up. You're muted. Did you think it started at 7?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, I am sorry.
I'm sorry. I just got all mixed up. That's okay. It's my fault.
Yeah. Well, in the best case scenario, though, it was recorded, so we'll be sharing it later.
All right. That's good. All right. That's fine.
Enjoy your evening. It was nice to see you all.
Yeah. Good to see you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
I was curious. There was a webinar last week with, I think, San Francisco. I didn't realize it was San Francisco was putting it on. I thought it was just general. And so I looked at it and I was like, wait, what's going on? And it's like, oh, I'm 4 hours